Well, good morning. If you spend any time working with wood, you'll know that it's very susceptible to its environment, most notably temperature and humidity. And I quickly learned that can have a real adverse effect on your design output on the laser. Today I'm going to tell you about a product I picked up that does a great job of minimizing it. I'm Gord Potter, and you're watching Laser Nug. In preparation for the delivery of my new laser, I picked up a number of different supplies or pieces of material, including a number of pieces of 3mm and 6mm or 1/8 and 1/4 inch craft wood. I've got some maple, I've got some cherry, I've got some Baltic birch, I've got some birch, I've got MDF, little acrylic in both sizes. And when I received them from the wood shop, they were beautiful, perfectly level and flat, every piece. So I stored them on the shelf, and in a few weeks the laser arrived. Created a very simple design after I got it all hooked up, and I decided to cut my very first piece. I used a piece of 3mm Baltic birch. Cut the piece once, cut it several other times, and as I looked over each output, although I was very impressed with the quality, I noticed a trending pattern. Take a look. I ran my first job, then again on a smaller scale, and I continued to repeat it. You may see some writing here. That's because I started to change my power and my speed settings. But nonetheless, I noticed that there was a clear pattern to each of these cutouts, or to each one of these design products. You may notice that in every case on all of these outputs, the left side is much cleaner with less scoring than the right side. You may also notice on a few of these that the engraving, or the depth of the engraving on a couple of these, is more shallow on the left than it is on the right side. It took me a few minutes to figure it out because I was wondering if I was doing something wrong. In all fairness, it was my very first engraving. Then I figured it out. You folks have probably already figured it out, but I realized that my Baltic birch 3mm had crowned. Not only that, but it had warped slightly. In fact, it's warped worse today than it was 3 days ago when I started using it. You'll also see that I began cutting from the top left and I came down the side right to the bottom left. When I put the panel into the bolt, the left edge was flat with the honeycomb. However, as the laser came across towards the center of the piece, to the right side, it began to encounter the crown or the warp in the board. So I had my first learning. The slightest, most tiniest change in the distance between the laser and the material is going to change the depth or the darkness or the scoring of that material. I tried magnets, but these low profile magnets are nowhere near strong enough to hold this board down level, no matter how many of them I put in here. It's still raised off the honeycomb. But I was fortunate enough in my travels over the last several months to have come across a YouTube channel called Just Jimmy. He's a gentleman here in Canada, and he's created a little fix that's going to help with that situation. He calls them lay flat pins. He makes them himself on a 3D printer, and he sells them on Etsy. Very reasonably priced, and I thought I'd give them a try. There are two different sizes. The large pin has a 1 1/4 inch stem. The smaller pin has a 3/4 inch stem. And they're simple. You snap them into the honeycomb. Let's take a look. These are made specifically for the bolt. Push them into the honeycomb and press down. And it holds your piece down for you. Let's take a look at the difference in the output now. Here are the initial runs you saw earlier. And this is the run I did with the lay flat pin. Not only have I noticed that the level or the depth of engraving is very consistent, but there's far less scoring on either side of the cutout. In other words, they work very well. The one condition, of course, is that you need access to the honeycomb. So if you have a full 12 by 20 piece, you either need to slide it over the ruler so that you can get access down below and to the side. But as you cut more and more open spaces, you have lots more opportunity to place multiple pins. I bought 8 of them. I created my second design, which is my logo, and I cut them out in the middle of the plywood using the lay flat pins. And you can see there's very little scoring, but it's even all the way around, as is the engraving across it. Just so you know, I have different factors on the left to the right side. So you'll see my engraved setting was darker on the left than it was to the right, but within each side, they're very, very consistent, and there's little to no scoring, or at least even scoring, all the way around the piece. I guess the point is, if you're new to lasers like I am, any of the wood products you buy will begin to crown and warp over time unless you're keeping them in a climate-controlled room. And I think this is a very inexpensive and effective way of holding your material down to try to maintain consistency on your cuts and your engraving. Big thanks to James. Great idea. And so far, I think the product works great. For you good folks, I'll put a link in the description to where you can find this product on Etsy if you're interested. And I wanted to thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope it was informative, and I hope I see you on the next one. Cheers.